Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar from Quadratec, getting ready for your first week with Teams. My name's Doug Davis. I'm the product owner of Quadratec Radar here at Quadratec. And we're going to be spending about 50 minutes going through, hopefully will be a pretty interesting presentation around just in general, the complexity of Teams, the challenge of Teams, the amazing capabilities of Teams, and what you need to do to get ready for it. So just a little bit about Quadratec really quickly. We're a pretty capable company, do a lot of different things. You may know us a lot out of the migration space, but we offer a myriad of products to migrating to Office 365, all primarily geared towards getting the Office 365 experience to the best that it can be. We have reporting tools, which the area that I manage, some pretty good security tools, management, and self-service Office 365 as well. So, if you get a chance, wander over to quadratec-it.com and take a look at some of our capabilities there as well. But that's not why we're here. We're here to talk about Teams, and I'm going to start with a pretty bold statement. And I think this is very true, and that's that Teams will be the most significant new service that we roll out in a while. So Office 365 has been around for some time now. There have been a lot of services that have been rolled out, Planner, Sway, Flow, and each one of these comes with a certain degree of impact, and some have been low impact. I would say that not too many people are using Flow or Sway yet, even though they're very cool services. This one has a huge impact. It's what I call a gold star service because it really becomes one of those pivotal services. And if your organization, if you're already on Teams, you probably already know this. If you're thinking about getting on Teams, this is going to be it's going to radically change how you approach collaboration and communication within Office 365. Now, that being said, with great services come great responsibilities. So because it's such an impactful service, so there are some services, Streams, for example, that were recently turned on by Microsoft. You don't really have to do anything about it. You can start looking at it. Teams are different because Teams aren't something that you just gradually ease into. It's almost like a big bang event. Once it sort of gets turned on, it becomes pervasive and sort of goes everywhere. So with those two statements, and I think it kind of outlines the importance of understanding how to plan for this service, let's go around what we're going to talk about today. So let's review what Teams are. It's kind of interesting because Teams is a service, but Teams are multiple. So it's kind of both. What challenges of Teams do you need to know about? So there's a lot that's there, and I think there's also need to understand completely the depth of Teams. And even I've learned some stuff going deeper into Teams this week that I wasn't aware about. Teams really is a very multifaceted service that they are rolling out. Before your first week, lots of planning will reduce pain later. Now, if you've already turned it on and you didn't do this planning, you're probably feeling some of this pain. But if you haven't yet turned it on, or if you've been able to restrict it a little bit, that's great. You can kind of take a step back and look at some of the ways that we can plan for this service. And what happens during your actual first week with Teams? Have a successful rollout, some great, what I would call some fundamental tenets to make sure that you do have a successful rollout, and then get it under control during the rollout and beyond. And we have been starting to get, reach out from customers that are basically saying, I don't know what happened. We turned on Teams, and now Teams is just running amok around my organization. I didn't understand the scale and the scope of this. How do I get that under control? And naturally, just like anything, it's better to be in control first without having to bring that back in. But we'll talk about maybe some ways you can bring it back in as well. Now, initially, when Teams came out and we're talking about it being a replacement for Skype, there was a lot of discussion on, well, it's not really as capable as Skype. Today, there's really very few things that you need to stay in Skype for. I would say start thinking about converting from Skype and convert as fast as you can. It can be very confusing if you have both services as your core services for this level of communication. And we'll talk a little bit about that as well. I know in our organization, which does tons of communication collaboration, we're remote everywhere around the world globally. You know, we don't use Skype at all anymore, and Skype was sort of the center of our universe previously. And I can't think of the last time that I did anything on Skype, including external calls and external meetings. You know, those are definitely getting easier as well. And we'll talk a little bit about PSTN. So basically using Skype within the phone context, sorry, not Skype, sorry, we're using Teams within a phone context. Because that capability is there as well. So, you know, for the longest time, not really long actually, but for a few months there, you know, it was like we couldn't do meetings because you couldn't bring external people in. You still need Skype for that. And you couldn't make phone calls because you couldn't hook it up with calling plans and things like that. So you still had to wait for that. That has gone away, and we'll talk about that. So what is Teams? You know, I was trying to think of a way of putting this together, because it really is a multifaceted product, but it's basically chat, meet, and call. All right. So if you think about it, it's very similar to what we saw with Skype. Skype is about chat, meet, and call, but it's a very different way of chatting, meeting, and calling people as well. Each one of these ways of using Teams is very much more robust environment, much more robust experience than you had in Skype. A chat is more of an interactive activity. Meetings are hugely more advantageous in Teams, and it's probably the one thing that will, you know, really help you solidify its use within your organization. And then finally, you can call people, you know, remotely. You can do the same thing as Skype. You sort of do call to call, multiple call, group calls, external calls, internal calls within people who are using Teams. And then you can now hook it up with your telephone service as well. But in essence, that's what it is. It's chat, meet, and call, and do it in a collaborative manner so that I can actually bring a lot of this information together. Now, why is Teams a different service? So why are we thinking about it, and why are we planning for it as well? So I would say that for many years, there's been 3 pillars of communication services in Office 365. So if you need to do email, you had Exchange, Outlook, all the things related to that. That's kind of your formal communication between internally and externally. SharePoint for storage, and SharePoint, you know, drives OneDrive and also drives a big part of Teams and Office 365 groups. That was where your files resided for. And if you needed to do ad hoc or other types of collaboration, Skype was the product there for chat and calls and things like that. And there was a lot of other services that were bundled up around this, but none of them really had the impact. I mean, we can do, you know, a meeting forever on why Yammer never became that core tool, even why Office 365 groups never became that core tool. Microsoft has seen that Skype wasn't going to be something that they could scale and build up. It's an older technology, and they wanted to build something around cloud services. And that's what Teams does. It kind of takes that Skype component out of that 3 pillars and puts that in it. And I'd say it's the first significant communication service had a major impact in the last few years. It completely replaces Skype. And it doesn't mean that Skype isn't still there, but there's really very few reasons to keep Skype around, and increasingly less so. You know, if you took a map of capabilities within Skype and Teams, and also sort of put down the core capabilities of Skype that you use it for, and compare with it what you have within Teams, definitely, you know, all the major ones are covered, and there's a whole bunch of other ones that are grouped beyond that as well. And the most interesting part of Teams is that your end users will love it. You know, this isn't a tool that actually came out of nowhere. You know, there were products like this in the market, mostly. Probably the most well-known one is Slack. And Slack really understood that how people like to collaborate is in sort of these in and out sessions where I come in, I go out, I chat, I talk, I send things, I share stuff, and I do it within the context of some containers. That makes sort of sense for me, and I can jump from container to container. And definitely they were starting to have a lot of impact and continue to have a lot of impact in organizations around this new way of communicating. So Microsoft did want to emulate that, and they really did do a great job of both, taking what was the best of Slack and adding the integration and capabilities of Office 365 and putting them together. And once people get into it, it sort of takes on a life of its own. It's going to rapidly become a more natural way for people to communicate and collaborate. And they are fun. People, no matter what your job is, no matter how boring or arduous or whatever, you want it when you communicate with people, you do want to have some fun. You do want to do some things. And there are capabilities in there that you never had in Skype. The ability to fire off GIFs and likes and, do rapid fire replies, lots of apps to jazz it up. We'll show you some of those capabilities as well. And really, it really makes it a much more interesting service to engage in. So people are going to suck it up a lot more than they did previously. And also, and this is the important thing, this is why you need to keep good handle on that, Teams are continually being updated. So Teams, primarily on the web side, but on the desktop side as well, Microsoft is pushing out new capabilities weekly to this. And if you're not careful, you can be overwhelmed by some of these new capabilities. And you can't refuse these features. Not only Microsoft gives you a choice, so there's a continually updated list of new features. And if you're just away for a week, here's what's new just this week. So for example, we know a lot of people have asked, well, can I archive my Office 365 Teams? Well, before yesterday you couldn't, but as of yesterday, you can now put your team into storage. So that was something, and actually that changed a little bit in my presentation, because I talked about how, if a team got tired and wasn't being used, you wanted to hide it. So the only way to really do that was delete it. Well, now you can archive it. So you can archive it, restore it later. And this is something that's really going to help with bloat. Teams bloat is one of those biggest things that is a challenge. And be able to archive this now is great. So it's there as of yesterday, and it's a new capability that you can do that. And last week they added stuff, being able to view and edit Visio files, dive right into Teams from other links, updated some keyboard shortcuts. It is not a stale application. And now the other thing is that these things don't get highlighted in the tool. So it'll just show up. So I know we've often been on Teams meetings and gone, oh, that's new. I didn't see that was there before. Microsoft is putting a lot of investment into this product, but also means that you have to be careful and sort of make sure that you're keeping track of it. So you want to be a proactive Teams administrator. So that's just kind of the preamble to sort of say this is why Teams is going to grow really, really big, and that's why it's important to plan for this. And if you don't plan for it, you end up with this. You don't just turn on Teams, okay? If you turn on Teams, first of all, there's a lot of things that people can do with Teams that you may not be aware of, and savvy users will gravitate towards it. There are a couple of nasty things in there, the ability that by default everybody can create teams and channels and do whatever they want to do. So there are always these clusters of power users in any organization that are always frustrated. I want to collaborate better. I want to be able to share files. I want to be able to do this or that. And then Teams pops up as another option for them. And they will start going wild. They'll see the power of it. They'll do things. And then another power user will also pop up over here, another one over here, and they'll start doing things. And then all of a sudden you'll have these types of questions. Why are there so many teams? This is probably the biggest complaint that we hear from customers. We turn Teams on and now there's 600 teams or 6,000 teams within our organization. No rhyme or reason, doesn't make sense. People create teams that are redundant. Do we use the East Sales or the Sales East team? Like which one, where's that conversation? Oh, the conversation was in this team, not that team. You want to make sure that's there as well. And then Teams people are kind of over here doing their own thing, and Skype people are over here doing their thing as well, because they never knew that Teams was on and there wasn't a lot of communication around that. And they're like, well, I'm still on Skype. Why are we having a Teams meeting? What is this Teams stuff? And then they're kind of embroiled in all of this. This is very important. And the reason why I say this is because we have been on calls now with a reasonable number of customers that have said, I wasn't really sure about this Teams thing. I turned it on. Well, it didn't even turn on. It became available. It started being used, and now it's out of control. And so we're really struggling with being able to get this back in. So how do you get from from thinking about teams to making sure that it's actually set up and configured properly. And this is what we'll go through in the bulk of our presentation. So first of all, know what is in a team. Okay, so a lot of people think that a team is like what you have on the left-hand side. So, and I don't have to spell Eastern. So teams started with a few core features, but can be expanded. So you see, there's conversations and files. That seems to be pretty easy. I create a team. I can have a conversation between team members. They can share files. But it can actually be a lot more. So I have a team on the right-hand side where, yeah, I have 5 communications and I have files, but I also have a wiki with a lot of information. I also have a website that I put in there, TechCrunch, because this is something around innovation. I put in a video in there with Microsoft Teams tutorial. There's a planner there because we're going to plan a whole bunch of stuff that's there. And now I have, and you can see here that I've added each one of these individually, and I can do different things for that. And this is still embryonic. I can add a lot more, but you can see that a team can become almost a whole internet on its own, and it can have tons of data in there, and that causes governance issues and things like that. Somebody who understands how to play with a team and expand it can make teams that become supercharged and become kind of fundamental to that. The best thing to undo is to figure out is understand what you can actually add to that. So I think people don't always realize that tabs are a huge part of, and tabs are basically an application, and you can add applications to that. So for example, if you go to add a tab, the ones at the top there are all the ones that Microsoft allows you to add from their services. So OneNote and Stream and Wiki and whatnot. You can add whatever from that perspective. But there is a continually growing list. So for example, if you're developers, there's Jira and GitHub. They can make this the center of their development. If it's somebody who's in kind of a more collaborative framework, there's Adobe and there's Evernote for collaboration. If it's somebody who's in sales, there's Hootsuite and other things that are related to that. So there's a huge list of these, and all of a sudden it can become the center for those as well. So for example, on the right-hand side, this is where I've actually embedded a tutorial video within my particular tab, and that's a pretty easy thing to do. But think of this as could be a potentially other application as well. So you have to think that that when a team is created the first time, it's like an iceberg. It's just the tip of the iceberg, and you want to be able to understand it can go a lot deeper than that. And a savvy power user will live off these tabs and start going through, because they've always, SharePoint, it's hard. What are the URLs? What's this site? Blah, blah, blah. Teams are there for everybody. There's a really simple list. You can do a quick search, boom, find it. Or if anybody's trying to do SharePoint search, it's frustrating. In Team, if I say, hey, I've added you to a team, boom, it shows up. Or if you're just looking for the team, you type in a couple of letters, boom, the team shows up. You go there, boom, there's your tab, there's your files, there's your planner, all the things related to that as well. So again, you can sort of see how this changes, and it might kill off your SharePoint sites. It might kill off, so other ways you've done collaboration without really knowing about it. So that's the first step. So before you get going with your first week of Teams, understand what Teams can do from a power perspective. And if it freaks you out, I'll talk about later, turn all this stuff off, and maybe that's what you want to do. So review all your settings. Now, Microsoft in their infinite wisdom always creates multiple interfaces for managing things. So with Teams, you have to manage O365 groups. You have to go into that one. There is the Microsoft Teams service settings, but there's also a Microsoft Teams and Skype for Business Admin Center, and you have to kind of go through them as well. There's not too many things here. The T-Bot is interesting. So, and I'll show you an example of the T-Bot. Microsoft and bots are an important part of this as well. If you have questions about Teams, and you don't want people to come to you, enable the T-Bot, training bot, and it'll help you. It'll help customers find out some of those as well. So look through some of these. Your Skype for Business, for business who don't have Microsoft Teams, you might want to do that during your Skype for Business and Teams hybrid relationship, or you might want to turn it off just to enforce people to get to Teams as long as possible. But probably the biggest one is to go into the apps and see if you if you want to have all of these things turned on or off. So the default apps, all those ones that show up at the top, maybe you want to turn a whole bunch of those off. You can turn them all off or turn them all on. Same thing with the external apps. So let's say that for whatever reason, air brake, which I don't even know what it is, but let's say air brake is not to be used for whatever reason. We understand that that's not a tool for us. Turn it off so that nobody can actually make a use of that particular product. And don't turn on allow side loading of external apps, because well, you can if you want to, but so these are the apps that Microsoft has gone through the process to make available, but there's a lot of other apps that have added team support that I can go out and grab and bring in as well. And you probably don't want to do that, because that's where things will get out of hand as well. So I don't see any particular reason to start off with apps turned on right off the bat, because you just want to get some of the core capabilities of it in. So go through these and figure out the ones that make the most sense for you as well. There's a few other settings within the services review, but those are probably the main ones. And then increasingly, everything's being moved over to the Microsoft Teams and Skype for Business Admin Center, which will eventually become the Microsoft Teams Admin Center as Skype for Business slowly goes away. This is where you can sort of make some changes to things. So, I don't think that these are default settings, by the way. I don't think that any of these, it depends on how serious your organization is, so if you don't want silly gifs and mimes and stickers in a conversation, you can turn those off. Unfortunately, these are global, so you can't be used on any of those. But there are some things that allow you to at least create some things. I haven't changed the Giphy content rating to see what happens if you move it up or down, but be aware that some of the GIFs can be questionable, and that might be something to review. You don't want to have people put off by conversations, from what's available. Just a side note, there is a call analytics portal and a call quality dashboard in here as well. But they're both extremely poor. Call Analytics portal is kind of a typical Microsoft Analytics portal where you have to ask it, to show stuff instead of it bringing stuff out to you. And the call quality dashboard's in preview and has been for quite some time, and seems to be a little bit stuck in a feature set as well. But know that there are these two settings, so don't just go into one and not the other, but go through those there. So you've gone through these settings and sort of set up the ones that make the most sense for you. So that again prepares you for your first week. Lockdown teams creation. Okay, by default, everyone can create a team. So this is what happened. Microsoft turned Teams on and said, everybody can do that, and they knew, they had a plan in place. They knew what they were doing. They wanted to basically launching a new service. They've been stung by services in the past. Here's looking at you, Yammer, where they've kind of put a lot of effort and hundreds of millions of dollars to try to get these services out there. Nobody really adopted them, at least not to the extent that they anticipated or hoped for. So they've kind of said, what, we're going to chuck Teams out there. We're going to give people like 2-week warning. We're going to, throw in some bombs like this is replacing Skype, and we're going to by default let everybody create a team. And then they're not going to make it really easy to turn this feature off. So, there's no setting in anywhere where you just turn off, say, only there's a team administrator and only the team administrator can create teams. You have to do it via Office 365 groups. You have to create a security group, which creates the folks that you want to create. Then you have to run a whole bunch of PowerShell scripts, and you have to, and then even then there's nothing that tells you that this is working. You have to do some tests. You call up somebody, hey, call up Jill down in sales. Hey, can you create a team now? No, she can't. Okay, good. So we've actually done that work. But I find this very hard to do, and it takes a long time, and it's a little bit, running PowerShell's scripts where you don't totally understand, what it's doing, because there's a lot. There's not just that one. There's about 4 or 5 different ones you have to run. I would say that maybe don't worry about this too much, but in the absence of this being able to turn this off, track and shut down any team that is created without authorization. So, and there's easy ways to track it. I'll show you how you can do this in Radar, for example, so that you can do that. Something else to consider is, and this does cause confusion, is that there are teams and there are channels, and a channel is essentially a team. It's the instantiation of a team, and people tend to get confused. Do I create a channel or do I create a team? And what I basically say is that, channels should be what you should create unless you absolutely need a team. So a team should only be created when you know you have a particular security context of people that you need to have, and then you want to segment those conversations or workloads among that team. So for example, sales would be a team, but then you'd have the individual sales teams that have their own channels. The biggest drawback on that is that it has the same membership as the team. So, the Eastern sales team can see the Western sales team chats and conversations as well. It's always that security context that sort of sets up when you want to have a team, but you should always create a channel first, and to avoid team bloat. Although in the end, channels, kind of bloat as well. So channel bloat is a problem. So I'd say that while you should always look at a channel first before you create a team, you should also always think about whether or not to create a team or a channel at any time. So what should your first teams and channels be? So this is a big part of this. So when people go into teams for the first time, they shouldn't see emptiness. Okay, they should see some structure. So one is create a corporate teams team. So you create a team about teams, okay? And this is kind of where you're going to create a whole bunch of different things. You create a sub channel for team info, tips, and tricks, okay? This will be your main method to talk to team users, include the rules document that we're going to talk about in a little bit in this team. Create a sub channel called Teams Requests, okay? So that if people want a new team, they put a request in the channel and it's trackable and you can reply. And so somebody says, I need a team called, Eastern Sales, you can say, wait a minute, there's already a team called Sales East, so go to that. There's eventually going to be a fun channel, and somebody's going to create this, and even if it's or they'll co-opt an existing fun channel and create it into a fun channel. Again, people love to communicate and collaborate, and if you have anybody under the age of 32, they'll want to use this kind of approach. So create a fun channel right off the bat, okay? If anything, it'll get people to start using that. But it will also be really cool on how you can go in and see the power of it, and also allow you to kind of moderate things in the early days and say, what, that's let's keep it keep it PG and stuff like that. But hopefully your rules document will talk about that as well. And create a top level teams based on structure, geo, department, virtual teaming, etc. Don't have too many of these to start, but sort of go through that. So let's actually go over and do a demo of this, and just hold on here. Where's my demo? Oops, I think if I just got it here, there we go, refresh. So here's my teams. Of course, it signed me out. I asked it to sign in, but it didn't do that. So here's a typical early team. So I don't really have a lot of teams that are getting set up here, but let's create that first corporate team. So let's create a team down here. Now I'm using the web client. Okay, there's a desktop client as well, and I was going to go into a lot of differences between them, but basically I use these interchangeable. So if I'm in a web client doing something else, I'll bring up the web client for Teams. If I need it, I'll do the desktop. So it sort of works the same. So let's create that initial team. So call this corporate. This is the main team for this org. And I can create a team using a template. It has a lot of different services. I can create a team from existing Office 365 group, but I'm just going to create it here, and I'm going to say anybody in the organization can join. Okay, so this is sort of free. So create this one. I'm creating the team. It creates that I can add some users to it, but I'm going to skip that particular part. It creates this general channel. So there's always one channel in every team that's called general, okay? And you know, you can sort of do whatever you want, you know, with this. I'm just going to see if you go over here. One thing that I would, you know, you might want to do is, no, I don't think you can rename the general one. So let's add some other ones. So let's add a channel here. Okay, so let's add a channel. Let's add the fun one. Fun stuff. Share with your coworkers. Fun things to share. And favorite this channel for everybody. So now I have another channel here called Fun Stuff. Let's add the other one. I'm gonna go back here. Add a channel. Let's do team requests. Put in teams requests here. Add, and let's do one more. Oops. And let's do the tips and tricks. All right, so when I come in the first time, you know, so think about it, this is my first experience. I see that I have this here, and I think you can now reorder it. They just changed this. And I put this at the top. So when I come in the first time, I see my corporate, I see general, fun stuff, team requests, I think, and tips and tricks. So then, you know, I can sort of go into there, and if I go into teams, you know, you can do something here. You know, here is where you create, you ask, and you can put some fun stuff in there. Put in a GIF. Let's go bugle. You have to worry about these sometimes, but let's do this one. You know, so somebody can come in and make a request for that. So you always want to make it a little bit fun as well. And you know, you could have, you know, wiki of the you know, of the you know, the procedure. So, you know, procedure to add a team content goes here. Put in your but again, you can sort of see here, and this is where I can also go in and take a look at all the different services. So let's say, you know, we did want to do some SurveyMonkey and some Poly as well. Install Poly. Then you have, you know, a lot of more capabilities there. Poly is really cool. It's something you can do some polls on, and we use this a lot. So, you know, if you want to, and I think what you can do is you go like at Poly. Hold on here. I'm just gonna see. I think it's at Poly. Boom. And then you do. Then you put in what your thing is. So, but what I'm just trying to show you that you should have a fully fleshed out, you know, corporate team that kind of gives people, you know, understanding of what they have. So they come in here, there's fun stuff, there's team requests, there's tips and tricks, maybe there's a news site, things of that nature, but you kind of have a pretty comprehensive thing, and you sort of put that into place as well. Now, as part of this, you want to have some rules, and I think for some reason my rules slide got deleted, but I'll go through that just sort of manually right now. So one of them is you want to have, so again, you would sort of come in here and go in here in the general. You can upload files, okay? So you create this folder file and have it there. So if I go into my files and just upload something, I'll just upload something quickly. So this could potentially be my document around that, so that I would get it there. So the rules would basically be, the naming structure for the teams, who can ask for a team, the rules of conduct. I think those are really important. There's no rules here for that. So what are the rules of conduct for that, and what to use a team for. So you have these core teams that are then created, and you have that ability to do that. So when people come in, they shouldn't see just nothing. It shouldn't just be a blank. I think there's normally just one, and then but you can actually go through it and go again. And what's really great is that I can come in here and I can type in Bugle, for example, and it should find that message. I guess it didn't in this case. Oh no, I just uploaded it. Let me see, what was the conversation? Team requests. Ask for yourself, just put in the word ask, and it'll find that particular hit, okay? So this is where that search comes in. So if I'm looking for particular files, let's see if it finds that GitHub, what I just downloaded, files, boom, the files will be there. Well, I guess we're still working on some of the search, but in a large environment, it's really great how you can basically, add a little bit of information and it'll find you all the particular hits for that, and you can go right to that conversation. So people also learn that it's where I can really start putting things together. So having that hierarchy is really really cool from that perspective. Okay, so let's go back to the presentation. So you created a team structure and you created the first teams, okay? Then what you want to do is basically you publish that rule set of, like, the naming convention, who can create a team, how to put in a team, how to manage the teams. But really what's going to supercharge this, and it's something that really kind of takes this thing, is that you start using team meetings, okay? So team meetings should become the immediate standard for holding meetings in your company. So we've talked a little bit about, so the chat, I didn't go too much in the chat, but once you're in Teams, you can chat back and forth. You have the teams themselves, which are kind of like these super intranets that have a lot of stuff. But really where this really pays dividends is in these meetings, okay? And team meetings should become the immediate standard for holding meetings in your company. You basically should have a rule, okay? So a hard rule, any new meetings will be team meetings. You should convert recurring Skype meetings to team meetings as well. And this is because meetings are persistent, okay? If you have a meeting, okay, in Teams, the conversations you have, the files you upload, the notes that you take are always there. So I can go back. So let's say that I have a meeting 3 weeks ago. I go back into my calendar, look at that meeting, open it up. Oh yeah, here's what we talked about. Here's was the chat. Here was the files. Starting like 2 weeks ago, you can record these meetings as well. The recordings will be there as well. So there are some pretty cool stuff in there. And then if you have a recurring meeting, every time you go to that recurring meeting, all the stuff from the previous meeting, all the notes are there, all the files are there, any documents, any conversations are all there, and it gets people up to speed really quickly. And you don't have to go and use Planner or Trello, although you can embed Planner right within the meeting as well. But you kind of have these there. And if you kind of take a look at them, you have these really powerful capabilities that are often expected and unexpected that really bring it in. And then you can also invite external guests to meetings. So one of the knocks on meetings for a while was that you had to, only could be internal. Now you can invite people. I've done that right from a meeting. Talk to somebody, said, oh, we should bring in Joe from XYZ company. He doesn't have Teams, so it doesn't matter. Invite him, see what happens. Boom. Goes to the browser, he logs in, comes in, and he joins the meeting within 30 or 40 seconds, and it's persistent for that person as well. So there's a lot of capabilities there as well. That was always a little bit dodgy with Skype, and also a Skype meeting kind of just goes away, right? There's nothing there. You can record it, maybe the conversation gets saved, but everything's always there within a meeting. Now the meeting has these has video, and so all the things that you want to see has, whoops, go back there, has, you know, basically video and audio options. So I can talk, I can do video. If you have video, it's kind of cool. It only brings up the videos that you absolutely need. I can share my screen, so I can share individual applications and share the screen. Everybody can see it. There's persistent meeting notes and persistent group IM. So if I come in to this meeting again next week, if it's a recurring meeting or if I review it, everything will be there. You know, the conversation that I had, the documents, the notes, everything that's in there as well. And now I can record the meeting. So the recording preview has just been turned on. So if somebody wants to record it, so again, you know, one of those things, well, I still use Skype because it has record. No, that's been removed as well. Microsoft is, you know, methodically going through and taking each one of these off. So that gets this there as well. So you've reviewed your settings, you've created your team infrastructure, you've prepared everybody that, you know, these meetings are going to be, you know, every meeting moving forward is going to be a Teams meeting, and you know, you want to sort of make sure that that gets enforced. So you're at that point now, you're ready to turn it on. So let's see what happens during this first week. So the first thing is communicate with end users and let them know what teams they should check. So like, let's say you're turning it on a Monday, the Wednesday before, saying, hey, you know, Teams is going to go live, even though it's kind of been live, they could have gone to it, but you know, it's officially going live next week. Actually, you can turn Teams off until Teams globally off until you need it. So have it off and then say basically, you know, send everybody an email or use whatever internal communications you have, say that, you know, Teams is going to be live next week. Please log into Teams, check out the corporate team, check out the tips and tricks channel. If you need a team, you know, you have to request it. It won't allow you to create a team. If you create a team without requesting it, we will automatically delete that, and have them check that. Use the corporate channel to start pushing company-wide Teams info immediately so people can start seeing that there's there, and do that very frequently so that there's there. And what's really cool is host a company-wide meeting in Teams your first week, okay? So, you know, everybody, you know, might be the first time they use Teams, first time they bring that. But if you have that, first of all, it's going to force everybody to use Teams, log into Teams, show them all the great capabilities, explain what Teams is going to happen for them. And monitor Teams usage and adoption as well. So see what's happening with it, and see if you're actually getting that, and tweak it as required if you can see particular departments are using it or something like that. And make sure that everybody's deployed the clients, get the web and the desktop out there. The web client is very rich, and like I said, I use it, you know, I find I just bounce back between the two, but desktop is nice. You know, it's a little bit more stable. It has, you know, it doesn't have to, you know, have multiple tabs open and stuff like that. So it's pretty good that way. So it's there. So at the end of this process, you know, you should have, you know, a pretty good infrastructure and starting to have people use Teams on a pretty regular basis. So make the conversion from Skype early. So one of the things that we hear from our customers is that, you know, we took it easy. We didn't kind of go all hog in for Teams, and now, you know, it's hard to move those last few off, and everybody's really confused and lost and perplexed. You know, back to that original thing. You know, you're in Teams, and it's annoying if you're a Teams person and somebody pings you on Skype. She's like, oh, I don't even use Skype anymore. You got to go over to Skype. Or if you reach out to somebody on Teams and they're not there, you're like, well, we're in the company. How come they're not on Teams? You know, there's meetings, and some meetings are on Skype, some meetings are on Teams. People get really confused and struggle trying to understand how to go between the two. So do this by enforcing the use of team meetings. Okay, you're not gonna win by saying, if you have a chat, do it in Teams, and you know, or go look at the Teams, stuff like that. Have meetings, because then people have to actually join there. But if you move folks early, it'll reduce the impact over time, and they'll realize that Teams is a richer, more complete experience, and people usually get over it. So, you know, a lot of services, they disappoint. They offer a lot and they disappoint. Teams is different. It doesn't disappoint. Teams, when you get into it, it actually does what I want it to do, and it becomes natural. After about 2 to 3 weeks, it's just where you want to live and do things as well. So do that conversion as early as you can, because if you do kind of let people hold on to Skype, it's going to be harder to get that through there. I'm running a little bit low on time, so I do apologize. I'm running through these a little bit quicker, but you know, there is PSTN as phone service in Teams as well. So think about this as well. If you're using Teams as your phone service, okay, sorry, Skype as your phone service, it's going to be really hard to switch people over, and you're going to have this hybrid environment. You know, so PSTN works really well in Teams. It's actually very rich environment, richer than the Skype experience. You can see an interface there. You know, for example, you have good history. All your contacts are there. Last time you talked to them, things of that nature. Very easy to make calls within it, and it goes really well. It does use Skype for Business as the underlying technology. So if you have somebody saying, well, you know, why do we use Skype for Business for cause? So, well, Teams actually uses Skype for Business. So, you know, we're just making that the interface for it. Check to make sure that it's available in your country. Not all countries have this option, and it requires the phone system service. So you speak Cloud PBX, there's a service there. And if you go to this roadmap of Skype and Teams, Microsoft has put a lot of information together, and with 4 or 5 features that they've added recently, external access, phone access, things of that nature. The gap, you know, I'm struggling, and recording was one of the things. Well, I can record meetings. Well, that's been added as well. There's not a lot of capabilities that you need Skype for anymore. So that's kind of what happens at your first week. So you've reviewed everything, you've got things set up, you've created the team structure, and now, you know, I want to talk a little bit about how you make sure that you're understanding what's happening out there. So what you want to do is use tools to track and audit how Teams is being adopted. So changing a little bit to my product hat, this is something that we have done a lot of work in Radar to make it very easy for you to track what's happening within the context of the Teams service. So first, the thing is that you can audit a whole bunch of Teams events. So for example, you know, Microsoft does fire off a event when a user logs into Teams when they add or update a tab. So if you want to know, you know, nothing's going to tell you in Teams. If you go to your Teams interface, you can't tell that sub channel has 8 tabs added to it. But those get fired off as an event. So take a look at the events that people have added members to a team, but more importantly, added a team and added a channel. So during this first week with Teams, within Radar, you can create alerts for those 2 events. So anytime that anybody creates a team, or anytime that anybody adds a channel, send me an email, send me an SMS, so that I can see what's actually happening, especially if you're trying to stop these teams from being created. So if you get an alert that all of a sudden a team has been created, you can kind of go back and say, you know, hey, did they make a team request? No team request, you know, either delete the team or work with the person to sort of say, hey, you know, that's not the way we do it. You know, maybe I'll allow it this time because it makes sense, or you know, this would have been better as a channel. And then when somebody adds a channel as well, you know, again, you know, make sure that that's kind of fits within the confines of what you're trying to do there. But if you have that capability, you're going to have a really good sense of all the activities over time. So you can look at the weekly patterns, the monthly patterns, and see how much usage is occurring there as well. And then we have some nice reports as well to show you what your team's daily activity is, and you can again get a more fundamental sense of how adoption is going, how things are moving forward, and sort of, you know, how things are moving up from a usage perspective. So really nice from that capability as well. There's some other reports seeing what devices people are using, how much is coming over mobile, how much is coming in over desktop, individual users, so you can see who your most active users are. You can find out who your power users are, reach out to them, become end user coordinators, or everything there. So it's really good from that capability as well. But at the end of this, so let's say it's Friday now of that first week, you know, if we've done these steps, so we've, you know, just reiterating here, but we've reviewed the settings, we've tweaked them, we've made sure that it's the applications that we're happy with. We've set up rules for how to create teams. We've created a team hierarchy that matches what we think we want from that perspective. We put in policies and procedures in place to make sure that we understand how a team gets created, how a channel gets created. We're enforcing that everybody starts using team meetings, and we've turned on phone calling within Teams as well, so that we can make that final cut off from Skype. And then followed it up with some good tracking to see how this is going. You can see that your first week can be fairly well contained and controlled. And this is the key to all the subsequent weeks that come on from this as well. So by the third or fourth week, people should have gotten into a good rhythm. They're having conversations, they're chatting on Teams, they're having meetings on Teams, they're going to the Teams and doing collaboration they need to do. You have tools to make sure that you're tracking how much people are using Teams, and you can slice and dice this data to sort of take a look at what departments are lagging, what departments aren't. You can compare Skype. You should be able to see Skype usage going down and Teams usage going up. If it's not, reevaluate, recalibrate. But it's all around, making that initial decision to not just turn Teams on and see how it goes, but make sure that you actually put that in place. So before we go on to see if there's any questions, one of the things that I did want to let everybody know that we have an upcoming team starter guide. So, we are basically able to, see what's we want to take all that we've talked about today and put some other stuff in there, so you can sort of see how you get started with Teams and how to really go through that as well. So that you get that just for registering, so everybody will see that as well. So that's there too. Okay, so I want to see if anybody's put in any questions. I just want to see if I have my question dialogue. Okay, there doesn't seem to be too many questions just off the bat, but I can kind of go over some of the questions that I had previously in another Teams one. So I think there's some things that I was thinking about as we went through this presentation. But one of the things is what gets created every time that you create a team, what gets created for that, and it's primarily just the conversation in the files are the default ones, and you have to add capabilities to it. So there's nothing that's fundamentally added to it as well. I know there's another question which was around can guests be added to a team? That's a really important question. They can be. So even though a team is essentially internal, you can have guests added to it, and a really neat feature in Teams is that it will tell you that. It'll say team has guests. So and it says that right in the right in the conversation dialogue, because there's nothing worse than thinking you're having an internal conversation and finding out that there's 6 or 7 people from external to the organization that have access to that as well. But it's really cool if you did want to create teams for customer engagement. So that's another scaling up of the capabilities. So you may want to turn external access off originally, and then move down the path of having more of the access to the subsystem. But once you have that, you can have some really cool teams where you're collaborating people externally, and they can invite you to their teams as well. So if you are talking about like how are we going to work together, if they want to keep the stuff kind of more within their confines, you can say, well, you guys use Teams, why don't you create a team? You can invite us to a team, or create a channel, invite us to a channel, things of that nature. I had been asked how do you clean up Teams, and I was all prepared to talk about how you have to just delete it, but as we can see, as of yesterday, you can now archive Teams, which is a really cool capability, and that's really a good another fundamental is that you're not going to get this right. You're going to have teams that just didn't end up making any sense, and don't leave them languishing. Don't leave them in that list. If you're any decent size organization, 500 or above, you will end up with literally sometimes hundreds and hundreds of teams, and you should call them on a fairly regular basis, and kind of go through, see if there's no conversation or anything that's happening within those teams, and sort of cut them off from there. But if you do that, I mean, it's an amazing service. I think it's a huge addition to the Office 365 world. I think it makes Office 365 that much more capable, and they're not finished yet. I'm excited to see as they go through. One of the things that they had Skype. What was it called? Skype for Business, for broadcast. Skype for broadcast. So it was kind of this capability where I could do a broadcast out. Almost like a FaceTime Live or something like that. It was really good capability when then Skype that they were starting to build. They kind of stopped building it there. That's being moved over to Teams soon as well. I think by the end of the year, that's going to be awesome. So if you want to do one of those sessions where you're talking to your organization, but you want it to be completely externalized in a sense, so it's just a broadcast. People can come into it, see the broadcast, and then fall off. And these broadcasts can be hundreds of thousands of people. Maybe it's not that many, but it was, the Skype for Business one was scaling up to thousands of people. So if you're in a large organization, or if you're going out to a large customer base where you think there might be literally hundreds of thousands of people listening in, there is that. So if and just keep track of that update as more and more services get added to Teams as well. Okay, well, if there's not any more questions, thank you for your time today. We have recorded this as well, so if you want to listen to it again or share it with anybody, that's available. And as stated, you'll get our starter guide, which will further entrench some of the things that we learned and talked about today. So thank you for your time, and keep track of what other webinars we have coming up. We have them on a pretty regular basis across all the Office 365 spectrum: migrating, reporting, security, management, self-service, and general Office 365 information are all coming down the pipe. And hopefully we'll be talking to you soon.